Well, and that's exactly the question I asked, and I asked that throughout the session. And so let's be clear. You can see on the screen behind us, I think, this is a snapshot of income. This was presented by the state economist and the Joint Fiscal Office that are nonpartisan folks. So they present data that helps inform the legislature. And what you're looking at here is the growth in income between 2002 and 2009. So at the very top, that from this part up, is that line, I think, is $75,000 and up to $1 million plus. That's where all of the growth has come. And you can't quite see the bottom, but those of us in the working and middle classes, $75,000 and down, we're lucky if our income in that period grew by 7%. Many people went backwards. And so the discrepancy is just
we can see
crystal
the bottom
clear.
Move the table a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, look, so people at the very bottom are actually having their income decline in that same period. So this, given this reality, I mean, this is the economic reality that Vermonters are living with.
And look how the rich people, their income is growing. There's so much they can't even get out of the way.
Yeah, right. We wouldn't see us on the screen if we. So this is the economic reality. Pair that with, in the last session, 2009 and 10, the legislature actually cut taxes for the wealthiest Vermonters. And then, of course, rather famously and with a lot of objection from Vermont's congressional delegation, Bernie Sanders leading the charge, the Bush tax cuts were extended in Washington. And so when you say 5%, the wealthiest 5% of Vermonters are saving $190 million, that's this year, okay, in 2011. That's their savings thanks to the Bush tax cuts. So I sort of led the charge. Anthony Polina, progressive in the Senate, also led the charge over there. Tim Ash was right on board in terms of looking at different ways to raise revenue. And what we were saying was the wealthiest Vermonters have seen their income grow a lot, way more than most of us. And we face revenue shortfalls, and they're getting tax cuts, they're getting a savings from the federal tax cuts. So I put forward a bill, H401, that was very modest and asked for about 10% of the savings they're getting from the federal tax cuts to come to Montpelier and help us close some of the budget gaps. I was particularly worried about mental health cuts, human service cuts, cuts to help keep elderly folks in their homes, on and on and on. And let's be clear, in the last 4 years, we've made cuts to human services. We have cut the state workforce by about 10%. Cuts and cuts and cuts and cuts. And so a lot of us were saying, enough. It's a tough economic times, and this is when people depend on state services more than ever. And it's irresponsible to just keep cutting. Yeah, sometimes you have to make tough choices in tough economic times, revenue's down. But we already gave tax cuts to the wealthiest of Vermonters. The Fed's doing the same. Really, I think, creates a window where Vermonters could afford to give more. We found a number of things. We were not successful in getting this through, but we started a very robust conversation, which I'm proud of. We found a widely respected poll done by UVM found that I think it was 72% of Vermonters agreed or strongly agreed with the idea of asking the wealthiest to pay a little more before cutting budgets. We found a group of wealthy Vermonters wrote a letter to the governor, said, please tax us more. That doesn't happen every day. And you found a coalition of, in fact, including a Republican, several Democrats, all the progressives, some of the independents, joined me and said to the Speaker, we want to look at this. Now, we weren't able to do that in terms of enacting law, but what we did was we advanced the conversation. We got more noise coming from outside the building, and we generally have, I would say, a loose commitment from the Speaker to examine this more closely next year, and from the chair of the tax committee. So while I would have liked to go farther, I feel like our effort has been somewhat successful in terms of generating a conversation and positioning ourselves for next year. I'm under no illusions that we're going to walk in there in January create a more just tax system that raises more revenue. But we're definitely going to have a vigorous conversation about it, and that's pretty good. That's, you know, I'm not, that's second best, really. Either I would like to just enact the policy, but short of that, part of our role is to generate conversation. We only have 5 people out of 150, so we can't pass laws on our own. But we can stimulate a discussion. We can stimulate discussion in particular around issues that leadership would rather avoid, and this is one of them.
I ran for the Senate last November on a platform of increasing taxes for the wealthy Vermonters, and I don't understand why they couldn't pay the full $190 million. The theory of the Bush's theory, the Republican theory of tax cuts, was that to return power to the states. The states were best able to determine policy, and based upon that theory, if there's a reduction of $190 million at the federal level, then there should be a corresponding increase immediately of $190 million at the state level, not 5% or 10%, but the whole $190 million.
Well, you know, I think that's more than we could probably bite off, but you know, I guess where you draw the lines. I mean, my bill was pretty modest. I'm the first to admit that, and I had Democrats signing on to the bill complaining that it was so modest, but on the other hand, the bill generated a very rigorous discussion, and if you go too far, you just shut people down and they don't even want to talk about it, and that's the balancing act. I don't have it right, maybe you have it right, maybe you don't. Somewhere in there is a way forward that is more fair and more sustainable, and where exactly that line lands, nobody quite knows. Historically, Vermont income tax has been a percentage of the federal income tax. It's nowhere near 100% of it. So there's some precedent to have it continue to be a percentage. But I don't disagree with you. I'm not sure I agree with you. I think somewhere in there is the right answer. You know, when people would complain that my proposal was too modest, I would offer instantly to sign theirs, and they didn't have it. So somebody has to take a leadership role, and at some point we decided that that's how we were going to go forward. But it's nothing perfect about that, believe me.
But in the governor's proposal, he didn't propose any tax increases at all, did he?
Well, he did, actually, around some health care taxes, around premiums, health care premiums, also around hospital taxes for different things there. He didn't propose broad-based taxes, although I don't understand how he really considers health care premium taxes not broad-based. Most people have, well, not most, but, well, yes, most people pay for health insurance, so they're being taxed. He didn't want to look at the income tax, didn't want to look at the sales tax. That's been a platform of his. You know, I appreciate the governor's leadership on some issues, and I disagree with him strongly on others, and this is one of them. His contention that wealthy Vermonters are going to pack their bags and move to New Hampshire or other states because of us tacking on a 1 or 2% increase in the income tax, I think is a little far-fetched. There's no data that suggests that. There's a study came out of New Jersey where they increased taxes on the wealthiest taxpayers recently, found there was no out-migration. In fact, if you look at data here in Vermont, people that are moving to the state tend to be wealthier. So they're in fact choosing to come live under our tax code. Not a lot to back up the governor, but he is the governor. He's a powerful man, and you know, if the governor says one thing and I say another thing in the legislature, generally the governor's going to win. I'm under no illusion.